And welcome into Poke the Bear, episode 333, presented by CLNS Media. Make sure to go subscribe to Bruins Ringside on YouTube. Lots of great podcast content, live streams, Bruins Beat, Poke the Bear, Pucks with Haggs. We got everything there for you, so make sure to go subscribe and turn notifications on. Or if you aren't a huge fan of watching us and you're like, man, these guys, I don't really want to see what they got going on here, make sure to go follow us on Apple Podcasts, Spotify, or wherever you get your podcast from. I'm Evan Marinofsky. That is Conor Ryan. Connor, what is up?
Evan, doing well. How you doing?
Doing great. Doing great. We're recording this on a Thursday afternoon. Brad Marchand has stamped his ticket to the Stanley Cup Final. So it's like, oh my God, the Bruins are in the Stanley Cup Final? Not quite. Not quite. And he's doing it for the Panthers, which makes it even more bittersweet for Bruins fans. We'll get to that. But first, the biggest news of right now, Marco Sturm. He's the next Bruins head coach. We saw late Tuesday night, Cam Robinson of Elite Prospects tweeted out that Marco Sturm is set to be the next head coach of the Bruins. And, Cam is not, up there, I guess, with like Sarah Valley and Friedman, but Cam does get stuff. Yeah. So, I don't think that he's BSing. I think he's probably genuinely got that. But again, that hasn't been confirmed yet by the team. That hasn't been confirmed yet by other insiders. Elliot Friedman spoke on 32 Thoughts on Wednesday morning and basically said he thinks it'll probably be Sturm, but he hasn't visited Boston yet, right?
Yeah, I think they said I believe he's visiting Boston on Friday. And that could also very much be hey, we're here to so yeah, what's your vision again? Okay, you have the job. Sometimes you have those interviews where it's the final one ends up just being so here you go.
Here's the job.
So you do wonder if something's going to drop. I mean, hell, it could drop right as we're recording this or immediately. What's going to happen is right after we're done recording this.
Duh.
So that's why I think we're going to cover a lot of our bases with Marco Sturm today, just in case something happens. But if it's not Thursday when we're recording, feels like probably Friday, maybe Monday. If it is indeed, they're going with Marco Sturm.
I would hope. I'm not a PR expert, but we do work in media. I would hope that if they offer it to him on Friday, now I'm sure word will get out. I don't know, save it for Monday. Have it that's a big piece of news. That's not a news dump type thing. That's not a Friday at 3 type news thing. It's not a Saturday or Sunday in late May, early June thing. Monday morning, announce that. That's what I hope. That's what I'm hoping. And now the reason I'm hoping is because I'll be away on Saturday. I'll be at something Saturday, and I know you're going to be away. Scott McLaughlin is also in Maine, so
everyone's all scattered across. Yeah, it's like the Avengers at the side of Infinity War. We're all over the place,
everywhere. We are everywhere, and it'd be the perfect time for them to announce it when nobody's around, everybody's tied up, everybody's at a cookout, looking at their phone, I'm going to need a couple minutes. If it is Sturm, which I think is fairly a safe bet at this point. I don't think
the writing's on the wall, right?
Yeah. Let's say this: where there's smoke, there's fire. One thing I keep hearing with Sturm, the big question that comes up is this the Bruins finding another Bruin? Is this someone he's kind of almost staying in-house, so to speak, picking a guy who's internal? And what I kind of have a problem with that logic, and it was sort of the same with Vrabel and the Patriots when they'd go, is this a Belichick guy? Just because you played for the team, just because you played for the guy, doesn't mean you're one of those guys. If Marco Sturm was an assistant coach here and the head coach in Providence, you're staying internal. That's that guy. Marco Sturm has been in the Kings organization now for about 7-8 years as an assistant coach and then a head coach with Ontario. Has spent time obviously with Team Germany. Never coached here, so I don't really consider him to be a Bruins guy, even though he played here for 5 seasons.
Yeah, it's almost kind of as you said, with the Mike Vrabel comparison. And listen, Mike Vrabel spent 6 years as an NFL head coach, had built up a reputation, had won Coach of the Year. His credentials speak for themselves, but it is kind of that same argument, right? Where even if you are a former player of an organization, doesn't mean that you're an in-house hire. If they go elsewhere, build up their resume as a coach, and then come back here. And listen, Sturm is not a proven product, right? He's not like a Vrabel or any one of these kinds of coaches that are returning or potentially returning to their former team. But I wouldn't categorize it. Jeez, can't even say that as a Bruins just called up all their old buddies and bring them back. No, it's kind of the same thing with Rich Peverly is with the Dallas Stars and kind of a main development role there. So like if he was up for grabs, or you were targeting a guy who's helped develop Wyatt Johnston and all these other younger players, Thomas Harley, that Dallas has, you don't want him because he's a former Bruin, or it's an in-house hire. No, he's been with Dallas for a couple of years now, really developing and kind of charting his own path. And it's the same thing with Marco Sturm, right? He's played here for 5 seasons, but then, as you said, he went overseas back to Germany to coach the German national team, got a lot of experience there. And then he spent, the last 7 years with the LA Kings organization. So, I'm sure, listen, it plays into it, I'm sure. There's familiarity. A guy like Marco Sturm knows the market here and what to expect. And I think that you can use that as an advantage, especially in the interview process and maybe just setting expectations for next year and the years ahead. But I also think the Bruins aren't, having a full whiteboard looking at all the pros and cons. And I think like Bruin was like the top thing at their list. I think you look at his credentials with the Kings, with the Ontario Reign, with the German team. It's all part of the equation, but it's not the overarching thing. Nor do I think is it fair to Marco Sturm just to look at his resume and what he's done to earn this potential opportunity and be like, it's just because he's a Bruin. I wouldn't dilute it down to that.
No, I wouldn't either. I mean, this guy has gone out, earned his stripes elsewhere, and has come up in a completely different system than yours. So I'm with you. I don't consider him to be a Bruins guy. Oh, it's the old boys club again. They're staying in the circle. Like, there's none of that. It's sort of like Sean Thornton. He's the chief revenue officer for the Florida Panthers. He's in a big ass job. Like, I think he's like, big guy there above, coaching and things like that. So we like bringing him in and having him work in the organization. And it's like, well, yeah, he played here a long time, but he didn't get brought up here in his current job in that capacity. So the big question
is, it's funny though that I think a lot of Bruins fans, if like they're going to characterize that as like, just another Bruin guy, like who gives a shit? Like, why are you bringing him in? If you're having that stance, then when like they announce like an official role for Chara, or like if they brought in Bergeron, you can't say shit. Don't say anything. Can you have them working at Optum like Gerard Mayo did, if that's what your stance is. If no Bruins, even ones you love, are want to come back in the organization and play some sort of role, you can't have that stance then. Like,
I agree.
I don't know. I'm not saying Bergeron's Marco Sturm or Marco Sturm is not Bergeron. Don't clip that. Don't clip that, Evan. I swear to God. But again, you can't, I think, have that stance if that's what the horse, the hill you're wedding. Geez, I can't even speak today. I am so wild up about these things. Yes, exactly. Honestly, it's because I'm switching to Celsius instead of my classic Dunkin' order. But if that's the hill you're willing to die on, I don't know what to tell you.
Yeah, I don't get that hill either. So the big question is it the right call? We heard earlier in the week names like Jay Woodcroft, Mitch Love. Took me a second there. I had a brain fart too. We're
struggling today.
No edits. Is it the right call? Is this the right guy? We'll do it live. Is this right? Do you think this is the right call? Is this the right guy if it ends up being Sturm?
Yeah, I mean, I like the hire. I think I've said on this podcast, I was really intrigued, obviously, first with Misha Donskov, and I also was intrigued by Mitch Love, just because I feel like they've got maybe more of a book out on like what their strengths are, like what you're kind of going to get from a coach like that. Marco Sturm has an established track record, but I would be very curious if he is hired to, what he says in terms of his like introductory press conference of what kind of team is he trying to build, because you read up some stuff on him, and one thing that people always mention is he's a great communicator. His players love playing for him. When I say that, I also don't mean that like he's just like the German Jim Montgomery. He's like a player's coach, and he's very much off of vibes. I think he's like good at, relating to younger players because he is a former player himself, but is very candid and upfront and make sure there's always a line of communication and an open door policy, all those kinds of things, which I think is important. I think that's probably the most critical aspect that especially younger, newer coaches, the NHL, really kind of prioritize in terms of maybe their coaching toolkit. So I think that's encouraging. But yeah, what type of team that Sturm is trying to build here, what the identity is, I think is something that's going to be worth keeping tabs on. If it's kind of what he's done with the Kings organization, especially with Ontario, he kind of modeled that team after the Kings that are very stingy defensively. Sometimes it's not the most riveting product. I don't know if we're going to get a lot of 1-3-1 like the Todd McClellan Kings or something like that. But if it is some sort of subscript of that, where it's, building from the goaltender and the defense out, and having a really structured system that doesn't lead to a lot of high danger scoring chances, I think kind of makes sense what the Bruins are prioritizing. I think people see all these younger guys coming up. They want to think that the Bruins are going to just like go buck wild with how like their offense is. They're going to be a lot more dynamic. But I think if you are the Bruins and you're trying to chart out, yes, we're retooling, but we're also just trying to get back to our strengths, I think it makes sense why they prioritize a coach like Sturm, a coach like Love, someone whose focuses, I think, at a defensive identity, and then having the rest kind of fall into place after that. So not surprised. And again, I think you look at where you could have gone, whether it's an established retread coach or something like that. I'd rather you opt for a younger coach who's paid his dues and is ready for this opportunity, like Marco Sturm.
We talked about it earlier this week on Bruins Beat, where it's like I like the direction they are headed in with the kind of coaches that they're looking at. I think Mitch Love and Sturm, Love, it's more, you can gain more from it because he coached the D in Washington. There are videos out of him talking about defensemen and his sort of defensive identity and how he wants his D to play. But you mentioned it with Sturm, sort of modeling Ontario after LA, and LA has been one of the best defensive teams the last couple of years. They switched to a 1-2-2 this past year. Still, we're near the bottom of the league or top of the league in goals against, in a good way, however you want to phrase that. And I think both those guys are going to offer stingy defense. I think both those guys are going to try to win games 2-1, 3-1, 2-0. Like, I think that's how they're going to try to win. And the more I look at this roster as currently constructed and kind of the way this offseason might go, we talked about this earlier this week of like, are they a playoff team next year? How do they actually get better up front? They need forwards. I think they might realize that, the way, like kind of the way the Bruins won a lot of games with like Bruce Cassidy and Claude Julien, where it was low scoring, it was tough hockey, it was defensive. That might be the route they take. That just might be the route they take. And it seems like that with their head coaches, with Sturm, and they looked at Love as well. So I absolutely think that they might be, or they are, and we heard this from Sweeney at the end of the year, talking about this in his post-season press conference of, we need to get back to being good defensively and having a defensive identity. And I think Sturm probably gets you going there.
Yeah, I do think that whoever was going to be, whether it's Sturm, Love, I think their priority, or at least like getting their house in order, has to revolve around just playing back to their strengths, having a structured defense. And I think stuff starts falling into place there. It doesn't mean that in and of itself is going to right the ship completely, but if you're able to have a structured defense, and not even a structured like defense in terms of just the defenseman, just a structured overall defensive system, because
yes,
my God, it was a mess this past year. Even if that means, a lot of maybe sitting back or, sometimes it not being the most riveting product on the ice, if that at least stabilizes your defense, has guys like Mason Lohrei playing at a higher level, if it gets Swayman playing back at a high level, you have your foundation at least set in stone. It's not the fun part of the retool or the rebuild, right? But I think it's a necessity in terms of how you build from there. And then I think what is going to be interesting is I think we can expect how, what foundation that Sturm's going to want to build this roster with, but how does he kind of tweak the offense, right? Is he a shot volume guy? Is he a quality over quantity kind of guy, which I'm not a huge fan of? How much is like the D getting involved on offense, which I think is going to be a big key. And for as much as, there was a great story in The Athletic, it was from last year when it was still kind of the Kings had their 1-3-1, and Nikita Zadorov was quoted in it talking about how much he hates the Kings system because he said it's not actual hockey. So we'll see how much they tweak that going forward. But as much as they have that label of being maybe kind of a boring brand of hockey, this past year, I think they were a lot more assertive in terms of like their offense is still generating a lot off of the forecheck, like causing turnovers, and as much as you look at the Kings and their reputation as like a physical grind out team, they have a lot of skill. Like got guys like Fiala, Kempe, all these players that they encourage to be active on the forecheck, cause a lot of havoc. So once they get in the offensive zone, they can kind of play the style of hockey that you want to see, the way that teams like Florida plays and has a lot of success doing that. So I think we can expect that Sturm, if he's the coach, his first order of business is getting the defense kind of in place, but how he figures out the best way to unlock more offense, I think is going to be the key thing, and something that I'd be very curious to see what he says or what he envisions it being once we get to September.
And there's the whole thing of like which forwards thrive the most under him. You see this sometimes with new head coaches, like even Morgan Geekie under Joe Sacco, where suddenly like, a switch is flipped. And you wonder what forwards are going to kind of activate the most with Sturm, and who are the guys that are going to, progress in their careers and move their way up the lineup. And if those are younger guys, then you're cooking with gas on that. So it seems like Sturm is probably the guy. We'll see. Nothing official yet. But we will we'll keep you posted. We'll keep you posted on that, even as we're away this weekend. Before we get into some other stuff, friendly reminder, make sure to go subscribe to Bruins Rinkside on YouTube. Lots of great content. Bruins Beat, Poke the Bear, Pucks with Haggs, live streams throughout the offseason. When they sign Mitch Marner, I'll go live wherever I am. I could be on a beach, golf course, my room, wherever. I will go live if they sign Mitch Marner. And I'll just be cheering for like an hour straight, just like clapping, and I'll do a cartwheel on camera.
That one video of the guy going like, "Yeah, buddy," for like an hour.
Yeah, boy. Yeah, I'll do that on camera
hilarious.
for an hour straight, longest yeah boy ever. And then obviously, Celtics All Access, Patriots Press Pass. Make sure to subscribe to those as well. Wednesday night, Brad Marchand, 4th Stanley Cup Final in his career. I gotta say, Connor, it's looking like it's Edmonton, Florida. I despise the rest of Florida, although I love Alexander Barkov. Like, I'll say this: if you know how in NHL you can start a team and you do like a draft and you get to draft like current guys. I think if I'm picking anywhere from like 2 through 5. Mm-hmm. I might pick him. Like if I'm picking second, it's hard not to pick him. I mean, he is a freaking beast, and he's so fun to watch. But like as I watch him, I'm like, I kind of want Brad Marchand to get a second cup. I do, and if it means the Panthers get to win 2 straight, whatever. But I'm rooting for it. I want to see it.
I mean, they're just relentless, right? I mean, they're the ultimate, team that smells blood in the water and they pounce, and there's like really nothing you can do. Like Carolina starts out strong in that game, give them opportunity to get a power play goal, and as soon as that first goal went in, you're like, here it comes.
That's
and it's just, even, you've had stretches where, Carolina comes back, ties it on third, but then, again, what we've talked about before, sometimes you just need your big dogs to go off in these critical moments. You saw that with Rantanen the last couple of rounds. You saw Barkov in that, where it's just a superstar player making a superstar play in a critical moment, and just smokes poor Dmitry Orlov, who, my God, had a rough go of that series.
Brutal series. Oh,
yeah, it was not great. But still, to shake him off, make that play, it's classic Barkov in terms of when he's on his game, which is most times he hops over the boards. He's just a difference maker. But they are just tough to beat, man. Like, it's even like Matthew Tkachuk hasn't had like the most productive like playoff run where it was like, the 2023 run where he feel like you factored into every single goal. But they've got so many guys that can burn you. You've got Sam Bennett, you know what he can do. Luosterainen has been great. Lundell, who killed the Bruins last year. For Hagee, right? All across the group, all across that roster, you've got guys that can burn you. They can take over any given game. I'm not even counting like their fourth line. I feel like they got like 20 fourth liners. And I think it's a given that every single series, you're going to have one of those, the AJ Greer game, the Jesper Boquist game, right? Like you're
all former Bruins.
Yeah. And so they're just a team that, if you're looking at, I think, a template of how to play in today's NHL, like depth, skill all across their grouping, like the fourth line has checking line forwards, but guys that can skate, can make plays, can finish in tight between Greer and, Nosek and how good he is defensively. Boquist, who Again, as a guy you wish was on this team, the Bruins, because he actually was able to skate. To the fact like their D all get involved, like how many goals they've had from the blue line throughout these last couple of playoff runs. They're just relentless, and not even counting, again, what we said before, Brad Marchand, where he's more of a middle six supporting player now. He can just kind of be prime Brad Marchand or vintage Brad Marchand, where just dog on a bone, relentless, hounding pucks, making plays happen. He had that classic, Bruins, face off draw, feed down low, sets up the goal there. Just, I think, he's in the right spot. He's unburdened by, not no longer having to be not just the captain, but the guy, like at 37 years old, the franchise player. Still, he can just be Brad Marchand, which is a pretty damn good player. Yeah, Panthers will drive you nuts. I know, like, we're tipping our cap to them now when, like, whoever it is going to be. I don't think Sam Bennett's going to be there, but when Matthew Tkachuk stirs up some stuff next time the Bruins and Panthers meet, we're going to lose our minds again. But
yes,
they're just a team that, it's, I think what we said before, the late 90s Yankees, where it's like, man, I hate this team, but like you make one mistake, they will make you pay. And that's what damn good teams do.
You gotta tip your cap. I also think their culture is incredible. Like, you see these newer guys come in, and obviously you saw at the deadline, Seth Jones, whose stock couldn't have been lower. Marchand's coming in. You're like, what is he? He's injured. Marchand's fourth on their team in points. I think he's not like, I know he's more of a middle six guy. With the points he's putting up in the playoffs, I think he is setting himself up for a pretty good payday for free agency. But then you also, like, just the amount of guys they brought in: Sam Bennett, Matthew Tkachuk, Carter Verhaeghe, some of these guys from elsewhere.
Rodriguez.
Yeah. Who come in and make an impact. Gustav Forsling over the years. I mean, guys who stock is pretty low, and they come in.
Nate Schmidt.
Yes, Nate Schmidt's a great one.
Ekman Larson last year.
Yeah, and they just get him to buy in and play that brand of hockey. And, Maurice can be a little bit of a blowhard sometimes, or like unintentional blowhard, but he's running in the ship well down there, man. And like, that's what I keep going back to. Is like, they are perfectly built. They have the perfect coach. And you think back, and it's like Andrew Brunet won the President's Trophy with them, right?
Yes.
And they canned him. And for Maurice, who had kind of worn out of coaching and everything. And it's an incredible run they're on. This is the third straight Cup final. And you wonder, like, it's a copycat league. I don't know how you copy them. They have perfect everything. They have agitators. They have skill guys. They have two-way centers. Barkov will probably win his third Selke this year. Halfway to Bergeron. He's not old either. So
it's going to be the Bergeron Barkov trophy in like 30 years.
The Bees trophy. Barkov and Bergeron. There you go. You can put them together.
Yeah.
So yeah, Panthers rolling. Looks like the Oilers are probably headed there as well. We'll do Stanley Cup predictions when it becomes finalized. Won't do that today. Another little thing, James Hagens spoke on Wednesday. I was reading your story on him on Boston.com. Interesting quote. I know why you probably put this near the top of the story. I love Boston, Hagens said. Being at Boston College,
He's talking about the band. I wouldn't be too much into it.
We're right in the middle of Boston there. So it's a beautiful city. Only great things to say about it. I love it there.
James.
Jimmy?
Not in the middle of Boston, but
middle of Boston. You know where that is? Anyway, Hagens is interesting because his draft stock's sort of all over the place. Some people, I mean, there were obviously mock drafts that had him going 1 to the Islanders. There's like this small push that wants him to stay in Long Island. He grew up an Islanders fan, grew up in Hauppauge, if I'm saying that correctly. I don't know if I am. But then there's also like Craig Button has him at 8. So a lot more people have him kind of in that 4, 5, 6 range, like somewhere in there. But it does beg the question, like, does he fall to you at 7? Is there a world in which he falls to you at 7?
Well, there's certainly a world, right? Not to get into the multiverse here, but
boy, here we go. Fourth dimension has Hagens going to the Bruins.
Listen, there's a lot that can change between now and the end of the draft, or the leading up to the draft. There's a reason why I think once you get to this point of the NHL calendar, and GMs and scouting directors and all these talent evaluators start really getting to the nitty gritty of looking at these prospects and seeing how XYZ player fits into their lineup, you can see why someone like Brady Martin, who was like a 15 to 25 pick, 2 months ago, his skill set, all of a sudden people are like, oh, he can be our third line center next year.
Yeah.
And it's so I think you can see why there is so much movement. And The Athletic had a story on Hagens earlier this week about how some evaluators are concerned about whether he's a guy that you can win with, I think is what they said, in terms of the size, that he plays to the outside a lot, all these kinds of things, which, again, I look at James Hagens and did he have like a Celebrini, Eichel, Fantilli year in college? No, he didn't. Maybe that's why there's some talent evaluators who are taking a step back. But, if his production was more in line with Matty Beniers, is Matty Beniers like a bum? No, he's a pretty damn good player. And I think I would say Hagens is a better player than Beniers, right? I feel like even if James Hagens isn't a Jack Hughes top line 90-point guy, not night in, night out, season in, season out. He's a
night
guy
in, night out, 90 points a night, baby.
We don't want this guy. You can't win with him. He scores 90 points a game. For Jake DeBrusk that one year.
That's right. that was an incredible piece of memory. Good for you for remembering that.
It still haunts me that I said that on the air. No, I think you look at what James Hagens could be. If his floor is like a 60, 70 point guy, you'll take that. And maybe he's not Jack Hughes, but okay, what's like the step below that? Is it like Clayton Keller? Pretty damn good player. He had 90 points this past year. He's pretty damn good. And he's 5'10", the same. I think even he's smaller than James Hagens. So I think a guy that is that skilled, skating wise, how dynamic he is with the puck, how great of a playmaker he is, those skill sets means he's going to get his points. I just think the skill level is too high for a guy like Hagens. And to what we've said before, I think if you see him drop down the draft order, it's not going to surprise me when he goes back to BC this upcoming year and he has 60 points in 30 games. I think he's just, you look at the body of work, he's not like this guy that the potential is there, but he hasn't put it all together. He was a point per game guy in college and he had 102 points the year before at the NTDP. And he had 22 points in the U18 juniors.
Set the record.
I think set a record with was previously held by a guy named Nikita Kucherov, pretty good player. So listen, I think if you're the Bruins, you hope that the draft stock is taking a hit. But I would also say, even if he's not the first overall pick, which isn't going to be the case anymore, but even if he's not number 3 or number 4, I also don't know how realistic it's going to be unless every team loses its mind, right? And it's all of a sudden, Maratka, a defenseman, jumps up into the top 6 or 7, or Brady Martin's stock soars and he does great interviews, or some team sees Roger McQueen. It's well, we could do the 5'11" Hagens or the 6'5" McQueen, and we're going to roll the dice with the 6'5" guy. That could happen. But I do think you look at who's directly in front of the Bruins in the draft order. You got Nashville at number 5 and Philly at number 6. 2 teams that have the exact same needs that you do, right? They desperately need skilled centermen. And so even if Hagens falls and all of a sudden, Frundell goes 3 and Marchand goes 4, and then, let's say it's Desnoyers goes 5, and all of a sudden you're oh, I feel like Philly's going to look at a guy like that and be we are so desperate for skill down the middle that they're not going to let the chance to have James Hagens feeding Michkov for goals dissuade them from going for another winger or something else like that. So I could see him drop a little bit, Hagens, but to drop to 7, a lot would have to go the Bruins' way. Maybe it's going to be the inverse of the fact that they got the lowest possible pick in the draft order. Maybe it's going to change around that way. But
the hockey gods flip it around. It is unfortunate because if they did get 5 or 6 or even 6, it's oh, you got a good shot at Hagens.
You got a legitimate chance. Yeah,
you want. I was writing down sort of how you would need the draft to go, and you're right. Schaefer and Meese, I think, are pretty sure locks for 1 and 2, and then you'd need one of Utah or Chicago to take Martone.
Yeah,
which is totally possible. That's not out of the realm of possibility at all. Frundell probably goes early.
You would need Martin. You need Martin and McQueen to have their stock.
Yes,
you need Martin's stock to jump up. You need McQueen for someone to just look at the skill set and the size and be that's a guy worth taking a risk on. Which it seems like there are, as much as Craig Button's draft list can sometimes be an outlier from others. he always is pretty plugged in with like talent evaluators and like teams that I was reading. I forget where I read it from, but it was something like an NHL talent evaluator. It's like, oh, McQueen, if he wasn't injured, top 3 pick, like without a doubt. Like there are, I'm sure there's players or teams that think that. So like I wouldn't completely discount Button's rankings, because I think there are teams that you get to that point, you see what McQueen could be, and he had a back injury, but at that age, you're having some time anyway to let him heal up. Wouldn't surprise me, but again, I think if you're the Bruins, maybe you're just willing that into existence of like Martin jumping up and McQueen staying as like a potential top 5 pick.
One thing to remember, the combine's yet to happen.
Yeah.
If James Hagens goes to the combine and he doesn't look good, and a guy like Roger McQueen turns in his physicals and it's like his back's actually in really good shape and he's jumping out of the gym, it's like, all right,
Brady Martin's a beast, big farm strength, right? Like,
and that's like, we talked about this on a Bruins beat a while ago. Like Brady Martin is a guy. It's like you look at, you read about, and you're like, I want that guy. Like I don't care what he does for me. That's the kind of guy I want in my locker room. And there are going to be teams that feel that way. And what you would ideally need, like Schaefer, Misa, Martone to go, Frindell and Desnoyers. And then you're right. You need one of McQueen, Martin, or even maybe, as you mentioned, like a Mertka, the big right shot defenseman. Does he sneak in at 6? Now, I don't know how that would happen because
Philly need.
They Philly needs a center. So it's like, I don't know, but maybe they value a Jake O'Brien. I mean, James Hagens is under 6 feet. There's a chance that his combine isn't outstanding just because he doesn't have the size that people want. Maybe teams look at him and say, well, he's more of a left wing, and then it's him versus Victor Eklund, and we'll take Eklund, so we're not going to take either of those guys. And maybe that's how it goes. Again, every team has their own ranking, every team has their own evaluations, their own beliefs. It's possible. When I look at the numbers, that you need a good amount to go your way for Hagens to fall.
Yeah, it's the same with like Clayton Keller his year, right? Where I think he had more points as a freshman at BU, he fell.
Yeah, plant that flag, Connor. Plant that flag.
Listen, I'm a big Clayton Keller fan. I'm a little bit despondent that like Utah seems like they're in a pretty stable spot, because he's been my guy for a long time. Of that would be a great guy to bring to the Bruins.
Debuted that idea, so it's been almost 5 years.
But a guy that had more production at BU his freshman year, but I think was the 7th or 8th overall pick, and again 5'10", 175 pounds, like not the most imposing guy, but the skill wins out. If you're that talented in today's NHL, especially, you're going to put up points. And so, do people make that same mistake? It's like, how often do teams not learn their lesson? Like, I think you're seeing the inverse of it now, where like DeBrincat being a 2nd round pick, people aren't falling for that now, right? Like Blaine Hudson, I think people have learned the lesson of not letting another Hudson brother sneak by them.
Yes,
because like the skill is going to win out. Like the way the NHL is, size has a factor, plays into it of what you can do at the NHL level. But if you have the skating, you have the puck skills, all that kind of stuff, you're going to pull on the rope and be a productive player in today's game.
Yeah, I encourage everyone, like if you look at James Hagens' height or you don't love his points from this past year, please go watch a highlight video and take a peek at that and tell me if you don't love his skating and his skill, and be like, I want that guy in the Bruins.
He'll be a 50-point guy at BC this year. Like, don't overthink it.
I completely agree. Connor, what can the people look forward to from you over at the Globe and Boston.com?
Yeah, you can read my stuff over at theglobeandboston.com. We've covered every step of the way this Bruins offseason, whether it's the head coaching search, maybe Marco Sturm, free agency, trades, the draft, all that stuff. You can read all of it over at boston.com and the Boston Globe. You want to follow me on Twitter, X, whatever you want to call it, you can at Conor Ryan _93.
Go do all that. I'm surprised that head coaching news did not break as we were recording. So
it's all right. It's not noon yet. So right at noon, we're going to get like it's going to be like the gif of like Marco Sturm, like scoring the goal at Fenway. And be like, oh, damn it.
Damn it. The Sturm face, just him being like,
yeah.
It'll be fantastic. This has been fun. That's Poke the Bear. Conor Ryan, Evan Marinofsky, you Poke the Bear listeners. Have a great rest of your week.